destroy the dam. All the water pours out and it goes into the Isengard orc factory. And this has always been the problem, fighting the deep state.
And then you have, in Tolkien's time, the Tower of Sauron is very much a lookalike to the telegraph tower that were present in Stockholm those days.
Nowadays, how these politicians use semantics, the double meaning of words, because he say the informal state.
Men det är mycket som ligger utanför den formella staten.
And a synonym and another word what informal state also means is the deep state.
Yes, very carefully described. That you if you're gonna go up against Sauron, you better have a good plan.
To the system, everyone's a victim. Doesn't matter if you're black or white, it hates you all. Here inside the system, violence is a symptom. Fighting for what's right, but somehow everyone is wrong.
All right. Welcome everybody. Today is a super exciting day. Yesterday that Joe Biden threw in the gauntlet. He gave up, and Kamala Harris is she's the one who's gonna be the candidate for the Democrats in America. It's very exciting, and I think a lot of people around the world are starting to see that there is a movie playing out in front of us right now. So for this episode, we're gonna break it all down. We're gonna show you how there's been a long-term game going on here. It goes back to the Second World War. Tolkien, the creator of Lord of the Rings, have done an amazing job to weave in metaphors reflecting the real world and also reflecting stuff happening right now into his books that are like 50, 60 years old. So I have two experts with me today around the virtual campfire. We have Moot Bombadil, who is actually a character in Lord of the Rings. Welcome, mate.
Thank you very much. Well, it's Tom in the Lord of the Rings, but Moot means against in Mordoria. We could point that out. Just for starters.
Amazing. Yes, and it's a character, and you obviously know a lot about the Lord of the Rings. Luda, also familiar, you know a lot about the Lord of the Rings. Welcome, mate. Happy to have you here.
Cheers, mate. Cheers.
Cheers.
Good to be here.
It's amazing to have you guys here. And I think also a lot about, I saw that the new Vice President J.D. Vance for the Republicans, it came out from Politico, an article saying that he got a lot of his conservative worldviews from Tolkien, from Lord of the Rings. So I think we're on the target, we're on the mark. This is a lot of people are starting to realize that there are connections to Tolkien.
Yeah, it is an instruction book. We should not forget about that Peter Thiel, who might or might not be, we don't know, but he's for sure an important player in the big game of geopolitics. And let's see where he will go, because we cannot know. But he's also a Tolkien fan. All his companies are related, just as Elon, and they knew each other. Jim O'Neill, of course, and these guys, they are pretty much around the same age as me, and they have a long time standing relationship with Tolkien, because Tolkien is the instruction book.
Yep.
A metaphorical one, but it is a instruction book. We could easily say that it is the best instruction book ever written.
Great. And it's funny that you say that, because a lot of as soon as you start to climb in the ladder, I would say, for influence around the world, I mean, once you start to look at what the power players do, all the power players reference Tolkien and Lord of the Rings, so must be something behind it, right?
Yes.
Luda,
It's a
just
little
as
bit
the
like,
Greeks.
yeah, exactly. Point, Tom. That was what I was about to say. That it was like back in the further back when you reference to the Greeks or the North mythology, that then you understood that you understand the rule book of power. It's a subliminal communication with that sense, because then you understand that this guy probably understand, because you reference to that movie. It becomes not secret openly, but subliminal communication in that.
Yeah, you can say that, because the Nordics, the mythology there, if you read it from one point of view, if you read it from a serf or a peasant point of view, or a farmer's point of view, it says one thing. But if you read it from the management point of view, so to speak, it tells you another story. So it's all about what you are learned to interpretate in the story.
Yes.
The perspectives you have with you, the knowledge before you took the story in, it will it depends on what you know previously, basically. So storytelling,
I just want to put it in it's similar to semantics, where politicians, for example, when they say a sentence, it have different meanings if it is the people, how they interpret it, and how the government or other people in that sphere interpret it. It's a little bit the same type of game.
It's sort of what was this Blood Prince called? Machiavelli. If you know Nicola Machiavelli, he wrote also a manual for the princes in Europe during the feuds 500 years ago. But he talked a lot about the importance of double speak. So you say one thing, but it can also mean another thing depending on who is judging it. That is also segueing into storytelling. Luda, you have a lot of experience and knowledge about storytelling, and you also mentioned the mythology. Do you see patterns with your knowledge? If you look at, for example, Greek mythology, you look at North mythology and Tolkien, for example. Do you see parallels?
100%, but that is also because I know that Tolkien, he studied Norse mythology and he knew Swedish and all of that sort of stuff. But as you said, with the semantics or double meaning, or like hip hop rappers, they say lines that can have 3 to 4 meanings within one sentence. So they are word spellers, story spellers on a high level. Also, you have Mos Def, for example. He was a legend at that. But when it comes to the Norse mythology, what that breaks down to is the rule book of natural resources and the points that you want to have to rule the map of the world. And this is, I mean, Tolkien is a little bit the opposite, because that has more to do with how you break that power structure. So it's the same, but on the other side of it, I would say.
Yeah, kind of like an instruction manual on how to break the Isenguards in real life.
One ring to rule them all.
Oh, I actually have that one. So yeah, one ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. What are we talking about here, Moot?
Central banking system.
Central banking system. Okay.
Point blank. That's the central banking system.
So one ring to rule them all. That's one central bank to rule them all. One ring to find them. I've always wondered, who is that ring? Is that the CIA or?
Well, you need to have the intelligence operation. So, but it's all baked into the one ring. All of those functions.
Yeah.
And then you have in Tolkien's time, the Tower of Sauron is very much a lookalike to the telegraph tower that were present in Stockholm those days. It is it is almost it's a perfect match, you could say. So he drew these drawings and so on. So it's quite obvious if you understand that Bombadil, who is not very present in any interviews or anywhere, actually, but you know, he's surfacing now for this generation, because now it's time to get the blue jacket and the yellow boots to get him up and running. So Stockholm is Mordor, and outside Stockholm you have the forest, where Bombadil rules. He is the king of the emperor, the one and only of water, woods, and hills. And this is rather matching for the, we are talking about the decoding of this is that somebody have the control over the natural resources. That is very important. The mountain is the iron ore. The woods are of course very important. You need wood for quite a lot of things you're gonna build or do. But iron is the most important, and the water, because the water is, well, you can hear the WEF now. Water. So the water is very important when it comes to hydropower and all of other things. The transportation on the waterways. In Tolkien's day, the waterways were still the dominant resource of transportation, and totally controlled by the same oligarchs that created the ring, the bank, the central bank of central banks. In 1929, the Bank for International Settlements. The prelude to that is, of course, that, you know, to bring, after the First World War, to bring the Germans down, and so on. And Tolkien participated in the First World War as a signalist officer.
I'm going to stop you there. So what was really, really interesting is basically there is a character in the books, which are not in the movies, and that is Tom Bombadil. He represents, first of all, he's blue and yellow. His boots are yellow. His jacket is blue. He has a yellow hat as well, apparently. And he represents the mountains, the rivers, and the forests in the north. And
well, the waters, because he reaches, you know, he reaches all over with, you know, he has his contacts everywhere, you know, he reach all through all of the different, he has the information.
He has
so that's the trick.
Information advantage, which also just makes more sense then. But basically it's blue and yellow. It's the king of the mountains, and that is Sweden. And Sweden became a superpower in Europe about 400 years ago, in the 17th century. And you know, when the first movie came out and you watch it, and there is in the beginning a short they go back to about 3,000 years before the story with Frodo and Gandalf, and you see how Sauron is defeated. You know, they cut off the ring, and Sauron disperses into thin air or whatever. And then I've always wondered, what is Tolkien actually talking about? Was there a great war 2,000-3,000 years ago that we don't really know about, which he is, you know, signaling, trying to make us remember? Or
it depends on the time. The timeline there is a little bit fuzzy, but the one thing we know about Bombadil is that he was there first. He was there prior to Sauron and all of this. He's the oldest one that we know of in the books.
Yeah,
but sort of, you know. So, and that is why his beautiful blonde Goldenberry answers Frodo's question when Frodo discovers that the ring doesn't affect him. No, almost nothing affects him, not even the old ghosts of, you know. So when she asks, who is he really? And Goldenberry just answers with a smile, he is. That's it.
He is. I am. It says like Jesus.
No, he is the first. He is the sort of, yeah. So, and this is, of course, you know, among Tolkien fans, everybody can interpret this. But he has the, you know, he has the information advantage. The ring can touch him. He controls the waters, the forest, the iron, and
he's always been.
to see the but to see this on the in the eyes of Tolkien, the German war machine was totally dependent, as we talked about actually last time, on the iron of Sweden. Totally.
And I wanna say, because one thing, an argumentation can often be, but why did he tell metaphors? Why did he create these stories? Why didn't he just say it for what it was? And this is something that becomes very crucial to understand, is that when the Prussian school, the German school system came in, the whole teachings of the coming generation was focused upon the prefrontal cortex, just data, information. But we have something in our brain that's called the tribunal brain, which is the prefrontal cortex. You have the limbic system and the reptile. And the limbic system is the emotional, let's say, intelligence. Yep. And the reptile is our instincts, is sex, food, and fear. And in the German school system, you get very indoctrinated just to follow data. But as humans, going back to the Greeks, we have Aristotle, Plato, all of these guys. Then you work within storytelling, because then the information is processed in a different way. So you also, when you tell a story, you work with the tribunal brain and not just the prefrontal cortex. And this is let's see it as the data is very concrete. It's short, straight, and simple. But then you have the abstract part of the brain, which is more vivid, more, let's say, the creative sphere. And what storytelling does is that it connects the concrete and abstract way of thinking, because we as humans our natural state is storytellers. This is how we process information and understands with visuals, with the senses. And this is what drives us. We are very often not driven by concrete prefrontal cortex. We are driven by limbic system and the reptile system. So we are growing up indoctrinated thinking that we are driven by data when we are driven by limbic system and the prefrontal cortex. This is why so many people are very easily moved by one of the three instincts, which is fear. So Tolkien, Elon Musk, all of these guys, they understand storytelling and how important that is. And if you have not learned the essence and importance of storytelling, you will just see it as that. But otherwise, you see that it is so much more embedded within it. So storytelling is so important.
Because when the connection appears, then the possibility of critical thinking appears as well. Without it, no critical thinking.
Yeah, and the neocortex that you mentioned, it does act as a kind of like a security guard in your brain. So whenever you're approached in the shopping mall by a salesman who's trying to get like, oh, do you have 1 minute? The reason you just throw it away is because you know it's a salesman. You know he's gonna ask you for at the end of this. You already know. That's why it doesn't work. Because you already your guard he's ready to defend. But when you tell a story, you basically just jump over the security guard who is always looking at facts and words. But when you tell a story, you deliver the emotion, and the emotion slip through that. It goes to the second brain that you mentioned, the lymphic system, and that is the emotional brain. So it's actually deeper as well. It's deeper than the neocortex that process the words. So that's how you jump through it and that's why politicians tell stories. They don't stand on stage talking numbers, and if they are forced to do it, they quickly change to start talking in stories.
Yeah. Yeah, they do. But sometimes they are forced to play their hand.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to say, just the other week, the Prime Minister of Sweden, he was delivering messages about, more or less saying that the state is not really in control.
Förr i tiden, när det nu var, så var det så att nationell säkerhet var något kärnstatligt. Det var staten som var ansvar. Det är det fortfarande. Det är en kärnstatlig uppgift. Men det är mycket som ligger utanför den formella staten. Det finansiella systemet. Riksbanken är viktig, men alla bankerna och finansiella företag. Ta det försvarsindustriella företagen. Ta telekombolagen, för att ta bara några sådana helt uppenbara saker som ju är otroligt intimt förknippade med nationell svensk säkerhet för att kunna klara av kriser.
And out of context, he suddenly raises his voice and say, "It is Axel Oxenstierna that rules." This is amazing stuff. It is sort of out of context, but in context, and he changes his voice quite heavily as well. And so this is.
But this is a perfect example nowadays how these politicians use semantics, the double meaning of words, because he say the informal state.
Men det är mycket som ligger utanför den formella staten.
And a synonym and another word what informal state also means is the deep state.
Yeah.
But he uses informal state, so most people do not react. It's like, oh, informal state. But a politician or someone that is schooled within semantics and the deeper, they directly see, oh shit, he's saying up front the deep state right there and then.
Yeah, it is a classical double speech because, and as we talked about previously about the Nordic mythology, that you can read from two ways. You will understand it completely different, as Magnus very wisely put out, that it depends on experience and what you have been educated in. You will read it totally different. So this is a typical case of both of them. So it's a kind of one sentence storytelling. It's almost like a rapper, I would say.
Yes,
because it can mean many things. But in this case, with the Prime Minister's background and his knowledge, it can only mean one thing. So
and this also brings in the importance of when it comes to the words, and Tolkien was a master of words, and this connects it to Erik Welander, which was one of the guys who really messed up and worked a lot of spells within the Swedish language.
Oh yeah.
Wow. But this guy, Erik Welander, he was truly very abstract in his own writings. When he wrote his own stuff, it was very concrete and abstract, but what he molded and created for the Swedish people was the short, straight, and simple, because he knew how important the abstract and concrete way of communication is, because then you can just speak directly to someone, but they don't even, you speak over their head, but
Yeah.
you're saying it up in the front, so you are hiding in plain sight, pretty much.
Yeah, imagine being a kid in Sweden in the middle during the war, and you have all of these kind of national socialistic movements and all this, and suddenly, when you come to the morning in the school, you had to swear your oath to the Führer, and you were also, this kind of Prussian school, we should say, were introduced very heavily. The Germans were hit very long before. So this is in the middle of the war. So, but the Prussian school entered actually to the US and to the UK a little bit later on. Some regions actually earlier, because there were nefarious actors trying to get this one into inside the social fabric, and teaching the teachers. It only takes a couple of teachers, as I think it was the Russian master spy. I can't remember his name now, so we leave it. It only takes a couple of generations of teachers that you downgrade to this, then they will just keep on, repeating this same kind of short, straight, and simple. The big meaning here is that Tolkien, he uses massive amounts of words and very abstract writing and metaphors all over the place. But the story is still there. Everybody can understand it, and they want to learn the words, because it's a magical place to be in, and the brain is working on overtime. So he really managed to grab the whole of the world, and at the same time describe the same time that he was living in. He could not write this straight out and so on. Actually, sometimes it was pretty much straight out, because he really didn't like the central banking thing. He did understand about this because he was the son of a prominent banker. So he really did know in depth what is the monetary system was all about. And it's all about control, buying our time for nothing. So there is a double meaning again. The ring, the central bank of England, which is of course very involved in this, but the Bank for International Settlements, that's the crown jewel, and that is the blue and yellow ones there. That's the Bombadil Bank, you could actually say. So the name of the individual running the British is Norman Montague Ring, and Tolkien tried in the newspapers, writing articles and so on, or debating in the articles in the newspaper like they did back then, no social media. He tried, but the double meaning is quite cool actually when you think about Ring and Norman Montague Ring. He was not a very nice person, you could easily say. The equivalent of Mr. Churchill. Easy. So
And also I'm just gonna jump in there with Sauron, the main evil spirit, and you can actually fit Sauron inside of death saturation. You just remove the T and the I, and you have Sauron. And I don't think that is a coincidence at all.
No, he's magic with words. He didn't really learn Finnish because that's a complicated language. But the Lord of the Rings is, well, you could say loosely based on the Finnish national epos called the Kavala, which includes loads of storytelling picked up from spoken and written in a old stories, really old.
I've also heard that there is this famous opera writer Richard Wagner, and we also have the Russian Wagner group, who has been helping to deliver freedom to the African continent, for example. Wagner, he wrote a big opera, very long opera, and it was called Der Ring des Nibelungen. And it is also based, and it's about 100 years before Tolkien. and it's about similar subjects. And it has
You
been
could easily say.
yeah, there's some similar themes, and it does say on Wikipedia that he was also inspired by this earlier work, and why not? I just want to ask you then, moving on from Sauron and depth saturation, I'm gonna play the video from De Fria. They have one in the beginning of one of their episodes. They have Sauron, and it's really good. And then, how do you think that Tolkien, and his full name is John Ronald Reuel Tolkien, how do you think his experiences as a code breaker during the First World War influenced his depiction of secret messaging and cryptology in the stories, The Lord of the Rings?
Well, you could say that he easily had a knowledge of the beginnings of the crypto AG, which will be the largest intelligence scandal ever, many years later. But that is Blue and Yellow. It's a Wallenberg company, Ericsson company, ASEA actually from the beginning. So, but crypto AG is that's a whole episode in itself. We can just say that. Just as Bombadil in Tolkien's metaphorical, they have the control of the information from the get-go. As soon as it gets into wire and air, so to speak, they have the control over the information. That is what kicks off the Five Eyes countries eventually.
And another thing that is important to put a light upon that the majority do not think of when it comes to linguistics is that Tolkien was a linguistic master, and in the realm of linguistics, it's a lot within linguistics. And one of the things that you may not think of is that programming is part of linguistics, and the coding within the phones that we use now, it is from this, codes, and it's a language, it is linguistics. So he who had such a deep understanding, of course, he dealt with decoding because it is linguistics. There's no difference to it. And I just want to put in that when it comes to this Erik Welander character, what he was, 1936, he got the 505th prize from the Nazi regime when they had taken over the Heidelberg University, a place where they taught, for example, the old schooling from the Greeks, which is trivium and quadrivium. So this is what, for example, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon, all of these guys study linguistics. So just to, that is, storytelling and linguistics is such a key in all of this.
It is. That is how you make your coworkers inspired. That's how the linguistics is actually the most important tool you have when you're gonna present a lie or a alternative truth, a belief system for somebody that you want to do something. The linguistics is on. That's how we communicate. It's on.
Yeah, and this is why also what we see now on the world stage is a movie where Trump is the typical of the hero's journey, as an example, and all that comes with it. And I will. There's just one thing I want to put in, and then I'll come back to it. But just to put on the clarity, because Mott, you said that you have all these metaphors and all of this complex part of Tolkien, but at the same time, it's very easy also because it is you follow this story and it makes you want to know more. And this is called the villain frame, which is every legend, religion, Hollywood movie, big screenwriter use this framework. And then within that framework, you have all these metaphors, all this coloring, all these other codes. But the villain frame that Tolkien used for Lord of the Rings, the exact same model they used for the vaccines. And we saw
Exactly.
how the vaccine, how many people who fell for that, because that was a typical story. And it is, I'll do it quick. You have the main problem, which is Sauron.
And you can't see him. He's invisible.
Yeah, but they say the ring, the main problem. Then you have the external problems that the problem creates. You present the internal problems that the external problems create. Then the moral to it all you present. Then you present the solution to it and the result. And all of this you almost know within the first 5 minutes within a story. And this was the same with the vaccine, that the corona was the problem, you lost your job, all this external problem, people got depressed and felt like shit because of all these external problems. The moral was that you should be part of saving the world, and you should save your grandma and all the old and the sick and the weak people. And the solution was the vaccines, and the result was that everything would go back to what it once was. And this is so basic, but this is how all the powerful that affects us, because it works with the limbic and the reptile system in us humans.
Reptile.
100% fear.
So it is, and the result will be just as all the ones that fear Sauron, which you cannot touch, you cannot see him. It's so the fear will create the obedience, the compliance.
I kind of think that because of how he starts the story, I'm gonna go back to it one more time. So Sauron, he does die, and it was apparently before in our timeline. So I think he's talking about a bank collapse a previous one. Either it is the one in Venice in the 14th century, the middle of the 14th century, where we know
which caused the plague, which caused the plague as a consequence, or
huge bank collapse,
we don't know.
A huge bank collapse in Venice, and it does lead, like you say, the plague comes at that time. There's a lot of things we know about this bank collapse, a lot of things we don't know, but he could be talking about that one, because we do know they did, or
Babylon or Sumerian.
We do know they might have had the same systems, right? Babylon might have been the first debt-created society, as a debt-based currency in the society.
Probably.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm not saying that the Italian that you say is wrong, but that this entity, this Sauron, this thing have been existing for a long time, and now we need to wake the fuck up to that.
This is what I was trying to say. Yeah, exactly. Like that, and that's the picture he paints for me. Is like this phantom that keep coming back centuries after millennia. It disappears for a while, and then somebody somewhere on the planet decides, okay, it would be great to have a debt-based created currency, and then we just keep doing it over and over again. So I think that is what he means with the fact that Sauron is back. And it
Always. He always will come back with the
always,
fear.
yeah. All right, and in the Lord of the Rings, what parallels can be drawn to the One Ring's ability to control and surveil the concepts of modern surveillance technology? Like, what are parallels? The technologies to surveil people now, and metaphors in the books.
I will prefer to draw it to the central banking, because that's the ultimate control mean. The mean of control. That's the central banking. That's the control over the currency.
Yeah, fair enough. And you did also mention before Peter Thiel. Thiel is a funny family because they go back, I think it is his father or grandfather. He worked with Wallenberg back in the days.
Not that Thiel. That's another Thiel. We don't know. We
It's
have a
another
missing
Thiel.
link. Yes, we have a missing link on Peter Thiel.
Yeah.
We don't really know his grandfather. We know his father, but his grandfather is in the gray. There are several different stories there, and none of them is confirmed. And he have, as far as we have been able to research, he has told different stories to different individuals.
Well, it's
So,
funny. I'm not gonna.
He's a little bit shady there. His
It's
father,
a
though, is
little bit shady. And why it is so interesting is because Peter Thiel is running a company today, a modern company today, which is called Palantir. And
Yes.
Palantir is actually a source to communication in the books as well.
Yes.
So Palantir in Lord of the Rings is used, is kind of like glass balls. What do you call them? The balls where you look into the future.
Yeah.
So, and Trump in Saudi Arabia is standing with the sheikh, and they are holding this Palantir together.
Yeah.
And they use that to communicate over the airwaves. Is that a metaphor to something?
Yeah, of course.
Yep.
That is just a straight on the metaphor to communications over distance. So
Yeah.
I can, it's that one is, I think, pretty straightforward, but there can be built in, different things in it. But as I see it, maybe, just maybe, it could refer to some early looking glass operations. We will never know.
Yeah.
And I mean, we have Carl Nordberg, who has been on this game for many, many, many years. What is it, like 20 years? And his webpage is also Palantir.
Yeah.
They actually were in some dispute about the spelling and so on. That's quite.
And Sauron in the Lord of the Rings from Isengard. There's the dam is interesting, no?
Pippin! Hold on!
Hold on, little hobbit!
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it is.
Yeah.
What does that connect to?
Well, we do have this Swedish company called, it's based on ASEA, and our last episode is basically about ASEA and crypto. IG Farben and crypto, but we do talk about ASEA as well. It is the precursor to ABB, and ABB have been very kind to the world and installed the dams around the world in about they control the energy supply, the energy grid in 140 countries. How many of those have dams installed in the countries as well, I'm not sure. But the problem is that when you build those dams, especially in case a neighboring country is going to invade you in the future, there is a standard to put dynamite and explosives in the dams in case you or somebody else in the future do need to
for tactical reason, also for military tactical reasons.
blow it up.
Yeah,
In case you
blow
need
it
to
up.
blow it up for any reason. So there are dynamites inside those dams. And
good thing that Nobel invented it then.
Oh,
including the Nobel Prize, the Merchant of Death.
Oh, fair. They didn't plan that either.
Oh no, they keep it in the house, you know. So they
well, but that's the thing. And when you do look at, I think it's the second part, story of the two towers, and that's also two towers. Story of the two towers, you know. So
you remember. But do you remember the first use of dynamite when you have the orc coming running? Where they had the gutter, you know, the weak point of the fortress.
Yes, exactly.
So that's I wish that they put like a Nobel logo on there, but they didn't. But oh, God.
But I mean, it's other
way
movies. I'm not okay. Let's not jump in there. But I mean, one of the James Bond movies is also. It is so obvious. But let's not jump in there.
Okay, anyway, yeah, just gonna say. So it's very interesting that in order to destroy Isengard, the trees, the Ents, they do help from the hobbits, and they destroy the dam. All the water pours out, and it goes into the Isengard orc factory. And this has always been the problem, fighting the deep state. Especially if you go back to the 50s, we have touched on it in previous episodes. There's like a Cold War inside the US State Department. And the problem is that they can never guarantee, you know, for example, if they start fighting with the deep state in Europe, maybe dams will fall in America or they will fall on another continent. And that has always been a big risk going against the deep state. So that is something they have always had to plan for, and that is obviously also described by Tolkien in the books.
Yes, very carefully described. That you if you're gonna go up against Sauron, you better have a good plan, and you got to take a height for it, you know.
Yeah, I'm speaking of the story, the hero's journey. Frodo, he do have to walk to the mountain and throw it in, and everybody's asking, but if they could always take the birds, why didn't they just fly to begin with? But that is also the story. You need to grow on the journey to become the person you're meant to be. And how does Palantir represent an early form of secure communication and intelligence gathering? And what are inherent risks depicted by Tolkien?
Yeah, you can say that it was dangerous because if you can see the future, you will possibly affect the future in a bad way. So the outcome, this is pretty often we hear Elon talking about, you know, the most likely outcome is the ironical, the most likely outcome is, you know, he talks in these metaphors quite often on his X posts. And that is for sure affected by the kind of thinking around the Palantir and so on. So if you know the future, well, you can, to a certain point, the oligarchy can control the future by the means of, you know, controlling people, what they think, the opinion. So if you can control the opinion, you can almost always do what you want to. So this is kind of the metaphor that is within. But the risk is that if you think you can control the opinion, if you see the future and you don't bother about controlling the opinion, then you can be on a very slippery slope, and that can turn very, very quickly. And I will quote Mr. Ford: if the mains of the population understood how the financial system is set up, there would be a revolution in the morning.
Yeah.
This is Henry Ford being honest
Yeah.
in an interview.
Yeah. No, it's
I'm not
true.
bullshitting you.
And another word with the Palantir, or another perspective of it, is also, I mentioned to you before, that once upon I worked with a guy who's coached Oracle, Microsoft, and these guys, and what they work with, that these deep state figures know very well, is the art of putting in Trojan horses. And what happens if you're part of Palantir, for example, you see Pippin, when you go into that realm, there is also a big chance that other people can put a lot of Trojan horses within you, so that you become a tool for Sauron. You know, the greed, the fear that he sees you, he knows where you are.
Isn't
And
it
this is also a part of it, that controlling the sub-oligarchs,
you
as
know,
an example.
the one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. It's a little bit what I kind of imagine, how there are groups like circles. Imagine 12 people around this circle, and that's the main ring. So you have like the top team of 10 individuals. And then you also have one circle of people who are like, I don't know, corporate shamans or whatever. And they kind of start to take control of you, like you said, implement in the stories.
Yeah, it also implicates, or metaphorically implicates, this kind of compartmentalized cells that you work within, that one doesn't know what the other do, but the ones above it, they know what all of this do. So in the whole, when each and everybody within inside their ring, their playboard, their chessboard are doing, and they don't know what the domino effect will be on the other chessboard, because they are cut off from that. So
And
it
if you
is,
have a very high level of philosophically moral, let's say, you are not able to jump into the Palantir. This is why some characters in Sons, if they touch the Palantir, they just pass out, because you have to also have the psychosocial ability within you to be welcomed into that sphere.
yeah.
If you have too much standards, let's say, and not as egoistic and just thinking of yourself, your system, like you can't go in there.
You could say it's a straight-on parallel to the ones that are chosen to have more words, as we talked about before. I mentioned that. So if you go into the German school, you will have 2,000 to 5,000 words. If you go on a lower education, or being a plumber or a carpenter or whatever, but if you choose to go a higher education, and you are handpicked to be one of the protectors of the nefarious system, you will be provided with 25,000 words, maybe up to 50,000 words. Legalese or economylese, or whatever you want to call those languages. And that is a big difference. And that is what this is pointing at. It's pointing at we have a nefarious system. You have the right profile to fit into protect this nefarious system. We're gonna take care of you I think there are a couple of movies about this. I think Tom Cruise was within one of those also. I can't remember the name of the movie, but that describes like that pretty much as well.
And once again, we have Erik Welander, who created 2 separate languages within the Swedish matrix, which is one for the people that is short, straight, and simple, as you said, and then the legalese, the more governmental language, which is way more complex, which you often need a university education to be able to decode that language, because it's around 50% Latin. So when
funnily enough, he just brought back Oxenstierna. They had to do that.
Yeah.
Oxenstierna is the mastermind behind the so-called Stockholm bureaucracy, which is the same bullshit that we have in all the Western countries today. And Welander and his colleagues all over the world, they did approximately the same thing. They needed to bring it back. The people, too many people had too many words and understood too much, so they had to degrade the school system, and the people within it became too good. So people started to understand, and then they had to pull on a full brake and reverse back to the Oxenstierna doctrine. So that's pretty much why
And just the significance of words, I cannot remember who says it, but he says the first thing you do to control a population is to control the depth and the sword. And in this case, the sword, when we talk about semantics and code way of speaking, is that sword is also anagram for words. So what you want to do to control a population and take over, you control the monetary mechanics, the language, and military force. And the sword one is so subliminal. It's very subliminal, but that's what you want to attack. This is why Romani, one of the traveling people tribe that I've talked to, who got really fucked, like this is the beginning of the eugenics. These type of people, they even have words for Swedes that is not good, but they have a secret language, because they understood, because what the Swedes did to those traveling people, was to kill the language.
Yeah.
So words, once again.
Yeah.
So important.
Guys. We're gonna slowly wind down. We have actually talked for about 50 minutes already. Time flies when we're having fun. So we're gonna try to keep it around 1 hour today, guys. And I just think it would be awesome to just talk a little bit more about I think the telephones were obviously more new when Tolkien wrote his stories, but telephones have been in existence for a long time now. Once you really just think about it, like obviously they were able to listen in on the phone calls, like obviously, like boom. But when you never even thought about it, like no, there must have been people back in the day who double checked the hardware, and then we start to do the research about crypto AG. We can see that the hardware was infected to begin with, and all of this.
The back door was open.
The back doors were open, and we had 1,000 surveillance stations in Sweden in 1930. What has happened since then? Let's just end this by talking about the telephone tower that we were already. I mean, that is the biggest hint to Sweden, in my opinion. Of course, Bombadil is blue and yellow, but I think the telephone tower is kind of, well, it just opened my mind when I saw it, for example.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious, and therefore Bombadil is seldom mentioned. That was how Tolkien managed to get the books out. He even applied to go to work for Alan Turing during the war at the decryption department in outside London. He was declined. They didn't want him to go there.
Mm.
He wanted to do his part, you know. He was not unpatriotic. He just had an opinion, but no, he was declined. And he fought for many years to be able to publish his books. This was not an easy trip for Tolkien at all. So he had pretty much good time to rewrite and do stuff like that, because he probably had to change quite a lot to be able to publish it. And I would say, not believing in coincidences, there is no coincidence that the epic movies and the re-release of the books and so on came when it came, if we look at where we are now.
Yeah. Yeah,
There's
and
no
those
coincidence.
movies are great. They're a work of art. They're amazing. They're still
They're just
great to
missing
watch.
Bombadil. They're
Yeah.
just missing Bombadil.
The most
And
important.
John Lennon was too early on it. John Lennon wanted to make a take on the Lord of the Rings,
Mm.
but was not allowed. So even John Lennon was in the game of the Lord of the Rings when we speak of strawberry fields. So yeah, man.
Well, that's
Yeah, man.
great. Well, lovely to talk to you guys, and thank you for sharing this vital information. We're gonna send it out into the ether to the Americans, to the English-speaking parts of the world. So pleasure
Yay.
to have you here.
Pleasure.
All right.
Take care, boys.
Take care, guys. Have a good day.